Welcome to State of Identity. I'm your host, Cameron D'Ambrosi. Joining me this week is Prabhath Siriwardena, a product manager at WSO Identity Server, an open source integration platform. Welcome to the podcast, Prabhath.
Thanks, Cameron, and nice to be here.
So before we get started and talk a little bit more about WSO2, the identity server, and why identity plays such a crucial role, shall we say, in integration, and will continue to at an increasing level as we move into the future, would love to hear, a little bit about your background and how you kind of found your way into this so exciting digital identity space.
Yes. So I've been with WSO2 for slightly more than 12 years now. Been there since the very first version of WSO2 Identity Server, which was released in December 2007. And so that was my second job. And with that, I had a lot of opportunities to work with open source communities. Like everything we do at WSO2 is open source. It's like 100% open source. We don't have like community edition and enterprise edition. And also had the opportunity to talk with and learn from many customers. Like we have more than 600 production customers. So that's what I am today. Like learn from a lot from our customers and communities, and now try to apply what we have learned when we are building products.
Fantastic. And for folks who aren't familiar with WSO2, what you guys are building and what you guys offer into the marketplace, what's a quick and dirty kind of layman's pitch as to what WSO2 Identity Server is and why it's so important in today's digital economy?
Yes. So WSO2 Identity Server is an identity product which is focusing on the access management domain. So you know that in the identity domain, it's a broader area under the security discipline. So security discipline, it's a broader area. Then the IAM is a sub-discipline of security discipline, and it's another broad area. So we talk about access management, IGA, privilege access management, and many more. So the WSO2 Identity Server focuses on access management, which includes single sign-on and identity federation, then identity bridging, account management, API security. So those are the key strength of the product. And the way we have architected the product is to make it more extensible, more flexible. That's what we see our selling point when we are working with many customers. Most of the enterprises today, now they are struggling to bring in their legacy systems to this standard-based federation. So they have a lot of baggage behind. So it's hard to bring all of them to support these open standards unless you have product which is extensible, which can bridge these legacy systems and bring them into the standard federation model. So that's what we see our selling point. On top of that, we do support all the federation standards like OpenID Connect, O2O, SAML, WS Federation. Then for provisioning SCIM, then for access control, like fine-grained access control, we do support SACML. So on top of those open standards, the product extensibility and being open source. So those are the points what we see as the selling point of the product over others.
So is it safe to say you could almost think of WSO2 Identity Server as a Rosetta Stone or a Babel fish that kind of sits in between legacy systems that don't really understand the language, if you will, of identity federation and open API standards. And this kind of serves as that translation layer that allows you to access and unlock all of the benefits of open standards without having to dynamite all of your legacy systems and rebuild from the ground up completely?
Yeah, so that's a very one strong use case, but that's not the only use case we focus on. So let me give an example. So when many companies move into this federation domain, we see two anti-patterns building up. So one anti-pattern is federation silos. So your company may support SAML. So you have a SAML IDP, then you have a set of SAML service providers. But now you build a federation silo around SAML. So you cannot interoperate with another company or a partner which supports OpenID Connect unless you do some code level changes at your service provider or at your IDP. So that's one anti-pattern. Then the other anti-pattern is we see a lot of point-to-point connections. Like, so you have one service provider, and this service provider needs users login from different other partners. So each of these partners, they have their own IDPs supporting their own federation protocol. So now you build in like a lot of point-to-point connections. So one way to solve this problem is to have an identity bridge or an identity bus. So WSO Identity Server plays a key role in this identity protocol mediation and transformation too. That's one of like the key strength of the product.
It seems interesting to me that we are still kind of struggling to integrate identity into this next generation of kind of open standards and interconnected systems. I know it's a cliche that gets bandied around a lot that identity was the original sin of the internet, but it does seem apt in this regard that this was such a big blind spot in terms of how these open standards were developed that there's an opportunity for a platform like WSO2 to kind of bridge this gap. Do you see the need for software like WSO2 continuing, or is there hope that eventually open standard providers can essentially develop an open standard of open standards that allows for the interconnection and interoperability of identities across these platforms without the need for an additional layer to kind of synthesize them together?
Yes, of course. Yes. So open standards and open source, now we see it ruling all the domains. So not just the IAM. Mostly we see that in the integration domain. In fact, in the IAM domain, it's a slow progress, but we see we are getting there. Then again, in terms of open standards, what we see today in the IAM domain in terms of open standards is a TCP/IP moment. So that means like if you go back a few decades, so TCP/IP was a competitive advantage. Like if your product supports TCP/IP stack, you had some common like competitive advantage over other products who are not supporting TCP/IP. But today, when we buy a software, we never worried about the TCP/IP support in that product. Right? It's given. Like every product should support TCP/IP. If you don't support it, like you cannot exist in the market. So that's the moment, or the TCP/IP moment is what we see in the IAM domain. So every product out there should support open standards. That's given. If you don't support open standards, you are no more in this market. Like you cannot compete in the market. Then again, support for open standard is now no more a competitive advantage. So you need to think more about like build stuff on top of open standards to make it more user friendly, business friendly, and developer friendly. So that's where we are heading, like from WSO2 Identity Server point of view, try to make the product more developer friendly. So what we see today, like is a lot of people their IAM solutions are now maturing. So maybe like a decade back, everyone started with managing their identities with an LDAP, right? So then they moved to have federation solutions, like implement SAML, then CANS, then came to OpenID Connect. Now we see all these IAM products, the projects, so they are becoming a part of a larger integration ecosystem. Just having IAM is not enough. You need to have APIs, you need to have services, you need to integrate different APIs and services, you need to integrate with devices. And then IAM component play a key role in managing identities of all these components, especially like in the microservices domain, in the Kubernetes domain. So there are a lot of challenge and security. So IAM has to solve all this problem. And in doing that, since a lot of people are moving to open source and integration related tooling, the IAM product has to be more integration friendly, more developer friendly as well. So that's where we are heading, especially in the CIAM domain, right? So CIAM, a lot of people think that you can just buy a CIAM product and have CIAM for your company. That's in fact wrong. So that's the perception we saw people had a decade back when it comes to SOA. Like when the service-oriented architecture and SOAP was popular some time back, everyone thought just having an ESB, enterprise service bus, will be SOA. That's not right. So we see the same perception today for CIAM. You can buy something and have CIAM for your enterprise. That's not right. CIAM is a solution that you need to integrate a lot of stuff. You have the identity component, API component, services, integrate all together and then build a CIAM solution. So that's why we see in the future the IAM product that would be more developer friendly will be in the market.
I think you raised a really interesting point when you mentioned, integration of CIAM and kind of this broadening IAM landscape in general. One of the trends that we've kind of been tracking here at OWI is the consolidation of the different types of identity and access management, whether it's consumer identity and access management, whether it's employee identity and access management, whether it is identity governance and administration. At the end of the day, when you think about what an identity is within an enterprise, whether it's one of their customers, whether it's an employee, whether it's the system administrators, it really is just, a few different lines of code next to your entry in a database and what you have access to, what you don't have access to, if you abstract it down to an obviously grossly oversimplified level. As we continue to progress with the evolution of open standards, with the continued adoption of cloud-based identity and access management across enterprises, do you see these market segments continuing to consolidate and that eventually we will just have identity access and administration? Or do you see CIAM, IAM, IGA remaining as distinct market segments?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So there are two market segments. So one is CIAM, the other one is employee or workforce IAM, right? So those segments will continue to evolve like that, right? So CIAM would be focused on customers, so they have different set of objectives, a different audience. Then EIAM just a different audience, right? But then again, both the EIAM and CIAM are solutions. So to build those solutions, we need different IAM products. So that's where the access management products, IGA, then the PAM solutions, analytics, all those IAM segments, they come in to build these two types of solutions, right? What we see is, so as you rightly said, these IAM segments, so they are consolidating together, right? So nobody just want to just have like identity access management and federation solution. They need to worry about IGA, they need to worry about PAM, analytics, all this stuff together. So that's why we see, even though now we see like the vendors today, they specialize in different domains, right? So some vendors specialize in IGA, access management, PAM, like that. But when it comes to build these solutions, we see a lot of system integrators, they come into the picture. So what they do is, what customers need is not a specific product. They need their problem to be addressed, and for that problem to be addressed, the system integrators, they work with different IAM products and build a solution. So what we see is, yes, so these IAM segments are now consolidated together. And also we see some vendors who were specialized in just one domain, now they are expanding their portfolio. We have seen Microsoft doing that, Spring doing that. So they are doing that either building stuff internally or through acquisition. So we see this consolidation happening now. Yeah.
In thinking about WSO2's position in the marketplace, I do think it's somewhat unique that you guys are an open source platform. Can you talk a little bit about why you guys decided to make that decision to be open source and what benefits you feel that that's brought you in this very competitive space?
Yes, so the company was formed in 2005, right? So 2005, it was an era where the soap-based services were very popular, and then open source is becoming a trend, right? So if you build any open source alternative for an enterprise solution at that point, will get the market. So that was the trend in that time. So open source itself was a brand name, right? So when the company started in 2005, we were competing against Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, right? So we use open source as our brand value, right? So it gave us a lot of momentum. But then again, moving towards, right? So like if you take last few years, we see like everyone is moving to open source, right? So a lot of community around that and a lot of money pouring into the open source products. So everyone wants open source, and the future of integration already has become the open source. If you take Kubernetes, so Kubernetes is open source. Docker, it's open source. All the platforms we see today, so they are open source. And then again, we also see different business models evolving on top of open source. So the model we followed initially was what Red Hat had. Like everything we did It's pure open source. We didn't follow the open core model, so we don't have anything hidden. And not just the products open source, all the discussions that we do, all of them are open source. We have mailing list, anyone can join and freely be engaged with our discussions. So we follow basically the Apache way of building open source, and that has really worked for us.
And from a security perspective, do you feel that being open source positions you well to offer a higher caliber of security, given the ability of the entire open source community to be identifying and helping to patch bugs more aggressively than perhaps closed platforms?
Yeah, so I think so that argument is no more. Like, so some time back, people were thinking that there were like two schools of thought. So one set of people thought, okay, the closed source is much better because nobody can see the source, so they cannot find the security loopholes easily. And they thought like being open source is not good. And the other school of thoughts was people thought when you have open source, there are a lot of eyeballs, right? So then you can detect the issues in the code and they can fix it. So there are many good people in the world than the bad people, so good people will detect and fix it. I don't see that argument anymore. Any production deployment, so when they deploy a product, they will do the security screening by themselves. So they will do static code analysis, dynamic testing, those stuff, and make sure not just the product itself, all the third-party libraries that we ship with the product are all like clean from any issues. So even if you take proprietary products, right? So those proprietary products also use a lot of open source libraries, right? So all those things had to be scanned and then certified, then only you will go for a real production deployment. So I don't see that argument is there. But once again, especially in the IAM domain, we see a perception that open source is still not the right solution to build IAM product, right? Same people think open source is good for integration because they rely on Kubernetes, Docker, Apache web server, all is open source. But they have like perception that open source is not at that level for IAM. But that is changing. It'll take some time, but we know it's the right direction for a change.
And, looking forward in terms of predictions for the future, I love to have my guests take out their crystal ball and make some predictions. What would you predict for, looking into 2020 as 2019 comes to a close here, what we're going to see in the identity and access management space in terms of trends, the continued consolidation of CIM and IAM, perhaps? Do you have any predictions that you'd love to share with the audience?
Yes. So one thing I would see is it would the role of INT administrator will start to fade. The developers will start to rule everything. So they want to do everything from the IDE. How you define a service provider, how you define different authentication factors for a service provider, how you do adaptive authentication, and how you define adaptive authentication policies, how you test your IAM product with your applications. All those things will be more developer friendly. So anything that you if you onboard sort of IAM product, think about how developer friendly they are. So the future would in IAM would be like developer focused products.
Fantastic. And for folks who are interested in, how WSO2 products might be applicable for their business or the challenges that they're facing that you guys might be able to help them solve, what are the best places to go to find out more and maybe get in touch with the team?
Yeah, so if you go to wso2.com and under the contact tab, you can find a contact form, so you can reach out to us, or else just ping me. So my email address is prabhat@wso2.com. And also, if you have any questions, you can raise like product specific questions. You can go to Stack Overflow, and also we have a Slack channel, so you can participate on all the stuff, and also you can be part of our open source community too.
Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Always so great to have folks on who are kind of building, I guess, what I'd call some of the unsung heroes of this digital identity revolution that we're in the midst of. I think a lot of people don't understand all of the different layers that it takes to build the seamless, identity federation experiences that we take for granted. And I think WSO2 is behind a lot of that. So thank you again for taking the time to share with our audience.
Thank you very much, Cameron. It's nice talking to you. Thank you.